So I'm going to announce, this is wow, a wonderful and honor and a privilege to announce our commencement speaker for Kavala International University, Mr. Thomas J. Maronick Jr. Mr. Maronick is known as one of the top high-stake trial attorneys in Maryland, especially known for his criminal defense work, significant jury trials, wins defending those accused of sex crimes and gun crimes, amongst many. His career includes defending a Baltimore City police officer in a televised assault case that made national news, and a federal gun case where his results led to a government appeal. And ultimately, the Supreme Court weighed in on the issues. Mr. Maronick graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism from the University of Maryland, College Park, and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Baltimore School of Law. Mr. Maronick, my friend as well, is barred in the state of Maryland, the U.S. District Court, District of Maryland, U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Mr. Maronick is fluent in English and Spanish. Mr. Maronick focused his practice on criminal defense and DUIs, bankruptcy, family law, serious accident, and personal injury cases. He also helps business owners with a variety of issues, from debt and credit issues to restaurant and retail leases. He and the firm will also partner with other firms to take on serious medical malpractice cases. Mr. Maronick is the recipient of a superb AWO.com rating of over 10.0 and have awarded the distinction of being named to the National Trial Advocacy Top 100. He has earned Better Business Bureau Lead Counsel accreditation, as well as being named of one of Annapolis' 40th finest in 2013 by the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. He was selected in 2014 to the Daily Records VIP list, recognizing professionals who are successful by 40. The award, given out by an independent panel of judges, considers a nominee professional achievements as well as community work and the extent with they contribute a positive energy in Maryland before reaching the age of 40. Mr. Maronick received a lot of honors. He received USCA Best of Baltimore's Criminal Defense Attorneys List. He has participated in pro bono activities. He was a musician on call in Washington, D.C., the Irish Outreach Center in Ocean City, Maryland. He has how can I say, he is the best of the best. And I would like to call on my friend and the commencement speaker for graduates of 2024, Mr. Thomas Maronick Jr.
Well, thank you, Dr. Johnson. It's an honor to be here today, and welcome and congratulations to everybody in the class. This is an awesome moment for all of you. You have the opportunity today to go into the world and become anything that you want to be, to become the best that you want to be. And nothing's going to stop you. Isn't that exciting? You've got everything in front of you right now, and you've got the whole world ready for you. But now what do you do? How do you get there? Where do you go next? I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey. First of all, I've spent the last 2 days doing media calls between print and broadcast journalism for another high-profile case that I've been involved in out of Ocean City, Maryland. And then I hopped on a plane to go to Nashville for a conference. And if I'm dressed casually today, it's because I'm at the conference. But I have stepped out because Dr. Johnson was kind enough to invite me to be here today. And again, I thank you, Dr. Johnson, for that opportunity. I started my law practice sort of only somewhat with the plan of doing what I'm doing today. My original plan was to go sing jazz and standards and sing on a record label, and I sort of did that, but unfortunately the music industry is a very difficult place. It's about industry and less about music. I found that out because I was about to be signed to a record label, and then I lost my deal because the music that I do, and I still do sing some of the time, but not much anymore, but that music is standards, and it was popularized in the 1940s and 50s, and strangely, people aren't listening to that quite as much today. So it's amazing, though. You can listen to just about anything on satellite radio. You can listen to Frank Sinatra, and some of that music stays alive. But when I lost that opportunity, I still made a record of my own and realized that at some point I needed to go out and create a name for myself and use something that I really enjoyed doing and turn it into a career. I was a journalism major from University of Maryland. I started out right after college working for ABC Radio. And this little thing happened called the Bush versus Gore election in the United States, which was one of the hottest contested elections in the history of the United States. And I got to cover that as part of my background as a producer there at ABC Radio. And then right after that, we had this other little event that I had to cover called 9/11. So in the 2 years that I worked for ABC Radio, a little over 2 years, I was covering a very hot news story, the election, and then 9/11, probably the biggest news story in the last 30 years. There really hasn't, at least in the United States, there really hasn't been anything that's come even close. And I realized something. It wasn't really what I wanted to do for a long-term career, and the money just wasn't there in radio. And then I had the chance to enter the music business, and I thought that I'd be singing for a living. But all of those things sort of led me to where I am now. Back in 2002, I was at a crossroads. Do I go to law school or do I not? And I remember a meeting that I had with Tom Bresnahan, who was the general manager of the ABC radio station where I worked. And they were owned by Disney at the time. And Tom Bresnahan said, "How old are you?" I said, "Well, I'm 25. He said, "Let me tell you something. You can't make mistakes at that age." I said, "What do you mean? I make them all the time." He said, "Well, you don't want to make a mistake of turning down an opportunity and being a grandfather like me someday and saying to your grandson, you know, I could have done this." And that was his advice. He said, "I'd hate to lose you here, but this is your opportunity." So I did. I went to law school. I went to University of Baltimore School of Law as a night student. And then I switched over as a full-time student and graduated. I was technically a full-time student, but a lot of my classes were at night. And I paid for law school by hosting a radio show. So I took my radio prowess and my performing prowess and hosted a radio show on the weekend. And I sold commercials for that radio show so that I'd be able to afford law school. And then I wanted to be a visiting student in New York because they had some great classes. And I remember the meeting at Citibank where I didn't have my student loans released. And I not only could not pay for an apartment, but I couldn't pay for living expenses, and I had no student loans. So I went in and met the manager of the bank, whose name was Charles Gwilly. And I said, "Charles, I'm in New York now and I can't afford to live here, but if you can release my student loans, I'll be able to do that. So thanks to Charles Gwilly, I was able to actually live and eat. And I remember I made all sorts of deals in New York. I went to the bodega and I said, I have $5. Is that good enough to get me a lunch? And the manager at the bodega said, I'll tell you what, it'll get you a sandwich and it'll get you a small bag of plantains and a can of soda, but nothing more than that. And I said, I'll be there every day. I'll be at your bodega every day because at least I know I can eat lunch. And then I worked at a restaurant. And the restaurant was great because I didn't have to pay for dinner that night because they gave it to you. They called it food for family. So that's how I got through law school. I sold radio commercials, I sang gigs, and I went to the bodega and ate at a restaurant that I worked at. My point is, when I started out, it was all about survival. When I finally began my law career in earnest, which is after I lost my record deal, I had actually had a law license back in 2008. And my first law office was in the back of a Pakistani run accounting service. So there's an office, a bunch of people who didn't speak English, and then me in the back. And I heard a lot of talk in Urdu, which I didn't speak. And then I heard the word lawyer. And then I saw him point to the back. And that was where I began my legal career at 302 East 25th Street, Baltimore. And I remember right before that, I didn't have much experience. So I was singing karaoke one night and a judge came in and his name was John Previs. And I found out he was the chief judge of the Circuit Court of Baltimore City. And he loved to sing karaoke. He loved to sing Steely Dan. And I had a young, lovely girlfriend with me at the time, and he was much more interested in looking at her than me. But I said, I'm the guy who's with her. And then he talked to me, and I said, I sing karaoke too. In fact, I almost sang for a living. And he was interested in that. And I said, is there any chance I could work for you? I said, even if you don't pay me, is there any way I could work for you and just get me experience? And he said, we already have a law clerk. I said, it's okay. Do you have a deputy clerk? I said, I don't really know what that is. I said, if you can make the position up for me, I'll do it. And he said, I can't pay you, but I'll do it for you. And it had nothing to do with me. It was all because of the girl with me, I'm pretty sure. But either way, he let me learn from him. And that experience was the most valuable that I've ever had, because when I started that law office in the back of the Pakistani accounting service, I had some basis upon which I could tell people a little something. I had seen criminal trials. I had seen some civil trials. I had run around to every corner of the Circuit Court of Baltimore City to get files. I made copies. I made notations. I ran to 2 different courthouses because the Circuit Court of Baltimore City is actually 2 buildings. And he would send me to every corner and he would have me run and grab soda for him. And that was okay because I wanted to help the judge and learn something. And then when I had my first criminal trial, which was actually a sex offense case, believe it or not. Actually, I apologize, it was an assault case. I used some of that experience, and I didn't actually win my first trial. My second trial I did, but I got what's called a probation before judgment. And that client actually, I continue to still represent. He's a successful business owner. So I got him a great result, a non-conviction. And then my second trial, which was a sex offense case, I won that one. But it was all because of having that experience. I read a great book that all of you should read. It's by Damon John. It's called The Power of Broke. I was pretty much broke. When you're singing for a living and the only money you make is, as I said, selling radio commercials and singing at nightclubs, you find that every dollar counts and you use everything you have to turn it into something that can help you. I used radio sponsors to offer me stays at hotels. I wanted to stay at hotels because I didn't really have a great place to, meet people. So I got to stay for the weekends at hotels because sponsors would trade that for radio commercials. I got trips to New York on a free motor coach because I traded that for radio commercials. I was broke. I had no other choice. But I used that. And Damon John, when he founded FUBU, he used to trade advertising on roll-ups for FUBU, and he would find ways to advertise and trade that for something that he could offer. But in the field of law, you don't start out by becoming a prominent defense lawyer, just as you don't start out becoming a prominent singer. What you do is you work harder than the next guy. You have to work hard, and you have to believe in your clients, because if you don't believe in your clients, they're not going to believe in you. You have to speak with passion. And for me, as a guy who's been a performer, and I was an actor on House of Cards and some other shows a little bit as well, but I used all of that acting training that I had to parlay it into my legal career. I realized that changing pitch and changing tone and slowing down what I say and then speeding up what I say can convey a different message. And you learn that by performing, but you learn that by connecting to people. I have practiced in every single corner of Maryland and in federal courts across the state. People are different. People in Ocean City, which I love, they're different from other parts of Maryland. It's a small town, but a big city at the same time. And you have to understand that small town folks want to meet you in person. They want to meet you in the office. They don't want to transact business over the phone. They want to shake your hand. That's a Southern way of doing things. That's a small town way of doing things. But you have to know that. You have to know that market. And you have to know how people are. In Baltimore, people are much more adept at doing things over the phone because they're in a hurry and it's a big city. And I learned sort of both mentalities by practicing all over the state and by getting to know judges, and by willing to work for free, and by willing to volunteer for things, and by willing to give back. Our law firm sponsors nearly every bar event we can find. We want to give back. We want to be part of the community. We sponsor a scholarship at Stephen Decatur High School in Worcester County to help support the new young mind of the future. People who are the future lawyers, probably be a lot better lawyers than me, but we want to help foster that, support that. Getting involved is everything, because people see you as more than just a lawyer. They see you as a friend. They see you as a confidant. They see you as a voice in the community. I put up a lot of billboards. Some of them are funny. I've got one now in Baltimore that says, we handle tough cases for breakfast. That's what it says. It shows like, you know, a breakfast plate, and people think it's a breakfast ad. In fact, it's my law ad, but hey, it's all good. If it makes somebody laugh, and I've done something that day. You know, Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank, who serves on the Shark Tank panel with Damon John, he also gave some great advice. He said, get up in the morning and work out. Do it every day if you can. He said, I work out really early in the morning. He said, if you do that, you've accomplished something that day. No matter what else happens that day, you've accomplished something. As you got up in the morning, you worked out. Take that mentality. Begin your days early. Work out. Eat right. Exercise. All of those things are going to make you motivated to have a better day. People ask me about my joy. Other than my family, I have a lovely wife. My joy is when I get up in the morning when I'm in Ocean City and the sun is breaking out, and it's breaking out over the waves, and there's nobody out on the beach at that time, and I just see that sun creeping up over the ocean. That is my joy. That is my joy, because there's nothing more beautiful in that moment than that. And you've got to have that joy. You've got to have what motivates you. And if representing a client and getting a result can lead to more mornings where you can just sit and experience that joy and keep doing it, keep doing it. I've been involved in a lot of high profile cases. I of course, was on the one doctor mentioned, a police officer in Baltimore City. It's a tough case, and the media was all over me. I actually had an experience where I had to be rushed out of a restaurant in Los Angeles because somebody in ABC News recognized me and they wanted to film me and wasn't in a great position to talk. So I had to go out the back way. It kind of felt like a celebrity, but I'm just a lawyer. I spent the last few days doing media interviews about a case out of Ocean City that's gotten a lot of press, you know, and I realized that in order to advocate for your clients, sometimes you really have to be their advocate, not just in the courtroom, but sometimes out for them on television, because if somebody else is telling their story in the press, who's going to tell their story? You don't want to give away too much information because that's what courtrooms are for, but what you do want to do is advocate for them. And you want to take the fact that you've accomplished something that day and now accomplish your next thing. And you want to use the power of broke to realize that if you don't have a lot when you start out, use what you have. And I use that mentality every single day. There is no unimportant person. There is no unimportant case. And I'm going to share with you a story that happened to me this morning. So I'm at this conference in Nashville with some of the best lawyers in the business and some of the best business advisors for lawyers in the business. I had to use the restroom, and I was heading over there, and I met a lady who speaks just Spanish. And I got to know her, and I asked what her name was. And I was just there to say, hey, can I use the restroom when you finish cleaning? And she gave me her name, and we spoke in Spanish, and she told me that she needed help with something. And it wasn't something I did, but I immediately went to the person who was assisting with the conference, and I said, this lovely lady needs some help. She needs help with a particular issue, and it's here in Nashville, and I don't do that. Do we have anybody at the conference who does that? And we have found her someone to help her out. And then she introduced a friend, and her friend needs the same assistance. And the thing is, I would never have made that connection if I didn't reach out. I would never have reached out to someone I didn't talk to if I didn't actually ask her name. There is no more important person than the person you meet. Treat every single person you meet as valuable, because you don't know where your next case comes from. You don't know where your next referral comes from. You don't know where your next journey begins, and an ending is simply another beginning. Meet people. My mentor in life, one of them, was one of the greatest governors the state of Maryland's ever had. That's William Donald Schaefer. Don, I got to know late in life, and he was known for being late to meetings. He was the governor of Maryland, and he later was the comptroller. And he'd always be late for meetings. And they're voting on major projects in the state of Maryland, funding this organization, funding that. And he had a vote, and it was only a 3-person panel. So if he wasn't there, they couldn't have the vote. And Governor Bob Ehrlich, he was governor then when he was comptroller, he said, Don, why are you always late? And he said, because I met whoever, Bob, the doorman, and he had something to say about the Baltimore Orioles. And that's not something I'm ever going to miss. So Don Schaefer would stop to talk to the doorman about the Baltimore Orioles baseball team. And that was more important than anything else he had to do at the time, because the person he was talking to was his most important person in the world. And when you practice in small towns across Maryland, as I do, you realize the person at the coffee shop is just as important as the guy that owns a $100 million business. And I've worked for people that own $100 million businesses and who work at coffee shops. And if you never forget that, and you treat every single case and every single client as your most important case, they're not going to forget you. I'm not perfect. There's a lot I can do better. I can improve every day. But the one thing that people will never say about me is he didn't work hard enough. People will say he'll outwork you. And that is a mantle I'm happy to carry. It's a lot of stuff I don't do well, probably the least handy person you'll ever meet. I can sing, but I can't dance. My wife will tell you I'm probably the worst dancer she's ever met. I'm lucky I ever got married to her because she's Latina and dancing's pretty big in her culture. But what she tells me is, you work too much. Probably do, but it's because I care. Mm-hmm. Because every day that I have a chance to get up and work out and look at the beautiful sunrise in Ocean City, which is my paradise, it's a really good day. And I want all of you to go into the world and contribute and make your joy the passion you put into your careers, the passion you put into your life, the passion you take into every single day and every single client, every single job you take on, every single thing you do. Approach it with passion because you love doing it. And if you're asked to do things you don't love, think about the ending because today's beginning is tomorrow's ending, and tomorrow's ending is a new beginning. Thank you all. God bless you. Great luck, great futures. All the best.